Hello campers, welcome to episode 5 of Sounds from the Ziggurat podcast. I'm your host Mike and I'm confused. I was writing this in a still slightly intoxicated slumber following a gig I went to at the Concorde 2 the other night. One of my favourite bands were doing a charity gig and I was able to snag tickets for the asking price of a mere £10. The band is Enter Shikari and could have easily filled the venue for triple the price. I won't bog you down with why I like the band. Actually, fuck that, love the band. But it's inspired me to write a bit about what I find confusing about gigs nowadays. Maybe things have always been this way and I've been looking at the past through rose-tinted glasses, but in my experience, attitudes at gigs have changed, and I'm not sure it's for the best. I spend a lot of time on YouTube. I used to pay 15 to 20 quid for bootleg Metallica VHSs at record fairs and from online collectors. I was and still am pretty addicted to this band, and any chance I had to see something from them live, I took. I got into the metal juggernaut as they were coming up to their implosion period, where suddenly this tour de force of unitedness and fuck everyone else attitude seemed to be unravelling. They conducted an interview with Playboy magazine, and the extent of their fractured states of mind were apparent for all to see. Not long after, their bassist Jason left the band, and there was a long hiatus while singer-guitarist James Hetfield went into rehab. I don't recall a lot of this being common knowledge at the time, but I do remember the fading of any hope I would have of seeing them play live. Their live DVD Cunning Stunts was my bible for years, and I had never seen anything like it before, with a centre stage and extensive use of pyrotechnics and theatrics. It was like a mini movie centred around a band who had reached the top and felt they could do whatever they wanted. So yeah, I searched out all the bootleg material I could, with one of my favourites being a live cassette tape from the late 80s and Justice for All tour. It was muffled as hell, but it was fabulous. I've paid stupid money to go and see them numerous times, when I had money, put it that way, including 3 trips to Ireland in between 2000 and 2005 with my friends and partner. The atmosphere was always amazing, and each time I went I did not have to contend with fucking phones in my line of sight whilst trying to catch a glimpse of a loose solo or down-picked riff. I wish nowadays I had a small catapult that I could use to take fire and aim at any raised phone in my view that's up there for longer than the 3 to 4 seconds required to take a photo. Of course, the hypocrite in me used to come back from gigs and see if anyone else had uploaded footage from the show I had just attended, not taking into account who else's view was being obstructed at the time. I'm sure some sort of balance could be reached here. I once tried to film Rapscallion's gig at Bar 42 with the phone in front of my chest. I was still banging my head and adjusting the phone for movement, but ultimately I had chopped most of poor Moog's body out of the shot. However, I'm sure I just need more practice. I do understand the excitement of getting footage of your idols in the heat of a gig, but at how many other people's expense? Where was I? Ah yes, Enter Shikari last night. Or, well, it was last night when I wrote this, now it was a couple of weeks ago. There were 2 distinct differences I noticed between this gig and the gig from 10 years ago. First of all, yes, the phone thing. Secondly, at least where I was standing, not many people clapped or cheered when the band went off stage before coming back for the encore. Instead, the sounds of encouragement were replaced with just chat, talking, and then eventually broke out into a unified chorus of play more songs, or something to that effect. Maybe this is something that happens at Shikari gigs, I don't know. I'm a fan but not as invested as the people I met beforehand in the Thomas Kemp, who rightfully and proudly wore Shikari tattoos and showed me pictures of their extensive vinyl collections from Instagram. I thought we were supposed to make noise and encourage bands to come back, not just expect it. I have noticed similar things regarding enthusiasm at other gigs I've been to over the past few years. I saw Emmy the Great play the Green Door Store, and whilst the band was coming on there was just chatter amongst the crowd, whereas I was cheering my absolute nut off. I was about to see one of my favourite artists do her thing in support of her new music. I was excited. Of course, on the flip side, is someone else out there writing a blog or making a video about irritating people like me, who make too much noise and headbang and dance too much at gigs. I must add that I do these things in my own personal space and don't usually break out into a mosh on unsuspecting bystanders. Maybe because I never venture down the front of these gigs, where all the hardcore fans are, is why I experience a subdued reaction in my immediate vicinity. So in effect, it's my fault for being out of position. The thing is, anxiously queuing up with hundreds of people all about to rush the stage to acquire and squeeze into a spot at the front is something I have no intention of doing. Also, I have previously liked to position myself close to the bar, but that's perhaps another issue and I'm working on that one. Anyway, the gig was amazing and I hope a lot of awareness was created for the UK's largest independent music therapy charity, Nordoff Robbins. I certainly hadn't heard of it before. Let me know if I'm being a cranky old man about this via my Twitter, @_Ziggurat, leaving a comment on the YouTube upload, or writing a review on your favourite podcast client. I left myself a review on there the other day, and I'm not afraid to add, it was glowing. For those of you that have been looking forward to the Inferion interview, I'm afraid you will have to wait a little longer. I have listened back to a little bit of it, and although there is some background noise we'll have to accept, the almost 4 hours of chat will require more time to edit down, especially as it contains such delightful quips as...
But why would you stick your cock down there?
Our first band I remember sharing a bill with at the Good Companions pub in Peacehaven. Best Left Dead and Inferium were on the rota, and opening up the evening was Graham from Best Left Dead Sons band, Left Hand Red. I had a kind message from Darren, who was the guitarist from the band, on my Twitter, and coincidentally, I told him that Left Hand Red would be featuring on one of the next couple of episodes. The band started back in 2004, and their last gig was the 29th of May 2010. One of the rare things I observed about Left Hand Red is that their lineup actually stayed the same throughout their tenure, and the split only occurring when drummer Russell could no longer commit due to the upbringing of his young family. Selfish bastard. The remaining members will go on to form Give Her the Gun with a new drummer, as replacing Russell didn't feel like an avenue they wanted to pursue. A notable gig for Left Hand Red was when they got the opportunity to play Beachtown Festival in Devil's Dyke, on a typical rain-soaked English afternoon. Beachtown was unfortunately cancelled the following year, a few days before the event was about to take place. It appears that some of the suppliers for the event had asked for 100% of their money up front, and despite the organisers of the festival pulling together all they could, including remortgaging of their houses, they felt it was a wiser decision to cancel. Asking for 100% of your money that close to opening appears to be a harsh tactic, but on further inspection, there were claims that the suppliers did not receive their payments the previous year, which probably triggered the reaction. The organisers claimed that everyone had been paid, but there was a delay in receiving a tax rebate from the Inland Revenue. This may be something to investigate on another podcast, as there's always more than meets the eye in these matters, where companies are going under due to lack of payments. So where were we? Left Hand Red. When they were not playing massive festivals, you could find them, like many of us, giving our all under the camouflage ceiling of the Pressure Point. I asked Darren whether the band all got along together, hoping for some detailed stories of band infighting and stealing each other's girlfriends, but no, he says they all got along just fine. Left Hand Red's first single was recorded in one of the purest places a band can thrash out their material, a garage, and it was captured using our old friend the minidisc, dealing with the constraints of only having 4 or 5 tracks and having to constantly merge, or as the professionals call it, bounce, tracks down to accommodate more. Their final release was self-titled and recorded at Transmission Studios in 2010. As well as Ali and Transmission Studios becoming a regular mention on the podcast, you can once again find our other regular mention, Bandcamp, as the host of Left Hand Red's music, at lefthandred.bandcamp.com. Maybe I should turn this into some sort of podcast drinking game. Every time you hear the word Bandcamp, take a sip of your beverage. Every time you hear Transmission Studios, down your pint. Every time I casually mention that I have a good friend in the band, tequila shots for all. And for every venue I discuss that's still alive and kicking, high fives and hugs all round, and then shots of vodka. For my friends that don't drink, perhaps replace the alcohol with some chocolates, cakes, or your favourite Class A's. This track is... Oh yeah, what is this track? I haven't written that bit. Edit. This track is Junk Food.
All the hell popping pills
We all have those people in our lives that, if you bothered putting any effort into a friendship, it would be a long and rewarding one. The only stumbling block is that you just can't be asked. You meet up through other mutual friends once or twice a year, get on great, and say you should hang out all the time and become best buds for life, and then never see them again until the next mutual gathering. This is my friend Tim, formerly of the band Afterbirth. He played on guitar and sang vocals alongside my other good friend, remember to sip your pint? Roger, who was on bass. Instead of giving a long and detailed look at the drummers of the band, let's just say that there were a few, which ultimately led to the band's demise in 2009, playing out their last show at the Hare and Hounds. Roger and Tim met at global superstar maker and music business education powerhouse BIM in 2003 and played their first show for Gaz Marlowe's night Quid Rock. Quid Rock was another great use of the pressure point, taking a mere £1 off the punter and in return giving them access to see 3 or 4 live rock bands. Inferium were usually on call for these nights should Gaz have a cancellation last minute, as we all lived within about 5 minutes of the venue by car. Afterbirth got to support one of their main influences at the pressure point, the UK subs, and remember fondly being able to hang out with Charlie Harper at the end of the gig. Tim also recounts a gig in Wales, we've all had them, where one consumed so much alcohol during the night that he blacked out in the rented van as soon as they came off stage. The band carried out their recording sessions at Under the Bridge Studios and Warner Studios in Brighton, and I want to say a massive thanks to Tim for providing me with an awesome back catalogue material. As their music became more mainstream, they changed the name of the band to reflect that by dropping the after and adding an apostrophe, becoming just The Birth. You can find their Facebook page by searching for The Birth Brighton. After The Birth, Tim went on to play bass for Here There Be Monsters, and has more recently gone back to singing and playing guitar for his new band All My Friends Are Going Deaf, reanimating some of the songs he once wrote for The Birth. This track is called What Have I Become?
Second best, never was better than the rest. Spent my youth being second best, never was better than the rest. I don't know what I have become. I don't know what I have become. Spent my life being true to myself, never selling out for the good of my health. Spent my life being true to myself, never selling out for the good of my health. I don't know what I have become. I don't know what I have become. Turmoil in my head, a salary, a paycheck. Turn in my head, a salary, a paycheck. I don't know what I have become. I don't know what I have become. Now I'm here and I'm 9 to 5, never felt quite this fucking alive. Now I'm here and I'm 9 to 5, never felt quite this fucking alive. I don't know what I have become. I don't know what I have become. Now I know what I have become. Now I know what I have become.
Now for today's slightly newer track. I first witnessed Half Hour Hotel live at the Railway Inn in Portslade for a Zuberon promoted show. I have a feeling that I may have connected with the band personally through our mutual friend and local legend Richard Ward, who was then promoting gigs for his highly successful Overhead Wires music. I was also able to support them at the Green Door store on the 11th December 2015, playing a selection of my solo material. I was disgusted to spend an hour just now scrolling through their Facebook feed to find the date of that gig and realise how bloody long ago it was. The care the band put into the gig left a great impression on me, as they really wanted a positive night for all involved. I was excited to have my logo projected onto the wall behind the stage, reaffirming my opinion of the guys. They really cared about the evening as a whole, and they weren't just in it for themselves. The band is currently on hiatus, taking a couple of years out to focus on some other projects. Their bassist Rob has been doing the rounds in a truck that he has converted into a rather swanky music studio. I've noticed him parked up outside of open mics and other places around the city, filming live recordings for people's private usage and also for a TV series on Brighton and Hove's latest TV channel. It must have taken a lot of time, effort and cash to get something like that up and running, and I truly take my hat off to him. Check out the Roadie, spelled Roadee, on Facebook for more information. We can look forward to the return of Half Hour Hotel soon, but to tide us over until then, this is the title track of their Lanterns EP. Find more music from Half Hour Hotel on, altogether, halfhourhotel.bandcamp.com. For our last song today, I'm going to play a track by Marcie. They were my first introduction to seeing live music in pubs, namely the Free Butt. As I discussed in an earlier episode, Sunday nights there, combined with a few bottles of Newcastle Brown Ale, multiplied sometimes with the sobs on the way home, was absolutely tremendous. Both bassist Chris and guitarist Gavin had means of recording. I even think Chris had a dongle for Cubase, which might make him one of the only people ever, especially at that time, to have paid for it and not acquired it from a random compact disc of dodgy software. By the way, thanks for that, Mr. Holmes. On the flip side, I do have a vague memory of Gavin getting called out by Steinberg when they somehow found out he had been using a cracked version, forcing him to cough up the cash for a proper package. Marcie's catchy, indie pop tracks were a delight to hear live, and they were another band that had a small community of followers all out to enjoy themselves. I think the members all went on to different projects after Marcie, and some were started during Marcie. Inferium were lucky enough to have Chris come on board as our bassist, and his different influences contributed to some of our most interesting music. We had been good friends for a long time, but to unite in a band and feel like we were taking on the world together was incredible. We would often meet at lunchtimes on a Thursday and go to the Basket Makers for lunch, watered down with a pint of London Pride or HSB. Then it was back to his cellar, which had been converted into a studio and workshop space to do some recording for an upcoming Inferion EP. Unfortunately, towards the end of Infurion's days, people's lives were understandably being pulled in different directions, and shortly after this we lost contact, which left a void as he wasn't just a band member, he was a top chap and a great friend. Marcie gave me the blueprint of what it meant to be in a band, and seeing things come together from an outside perspective cemented my assertion that this is what I was meant to do with myself. This is Marcie with At the Cinema. Thanks for checking out episode 5 of Sounds from the Ziggurat podcast. I know it's only the 5th one, but I didn't actually think I would make it even this far at first. The Facebook page is still being updated, and soon there should be some random things appearing on the YouTube channel as well. As always, please connect to me on Twitter, which is @_Ziggurat, with any input or criticism, constructive or otherwise, or perhaps just to say hello because you are bored. I also had a vague idea for a Sounds get-together at some point in Brighton, if I managed at least another 5 episodes. Actually, I'll probably do it regardless, even if it turns out just to be me and Inferion ads spannered at the Bar of the Druids, which is pretty much most weekends anyway. To end, I want to mention that I'm currently writing this last segment on the 10th of October 2018, which happens to be World Mental Health Day. Part of the reason I started this podcast is to focus some of my energies into something positive and self-indulgently rewarding, following a period of internal skirmish. One of the things that helped me was some advice I got from Brighton's Wellbeing Service, which I endeavour anyone who might be struggling for whatever reason to check out, as perhaps an additional or first port of call to getting on a better track. Thanks for listening.